Welcome back to digital class, and now we're looking at percentage, but now it involves money. Now, of course, honestly speaking, when you go out to this world and you're buying something, all is related to money, okay? But somehow it actually also involves some percentage inside this money. So, for example, you might have money. Example, you have this money, and your mom might give you this amount. For example, they say, oh, okay, son, I give you $50. And now I want you to use half of it to buy half of it to buy, for example, to buy our lunch today. And another half, you can keep it for your saving. Okay. Now, if I were to say, oh, half for lunch means how many percent? Half means 50%. So you can use 50% actually for lunch today. And they say keep another half. So another 50% is what you keep it for saving. So this is again about percentage, right? About money. This is for example the first scenario that you can have. The second scenario that you have is something called the GST. So you might be wondering, teacher, GST, what is GST? So in simple, it's actually a tax that the government impose that every time when you are buying something, for example, then you need to pay extra a certain amount so that the government can use this money for the development of the country, for Singapore. So for example, in our country now, currently the GST is 9%. So if you go outside, you buy something, they will always charge you extra 9% because of the government's rules, okay, to help Singapore to grow. So 9%, how does it work? So for example, if you're buying maybe a bag, okay, you have a small little bag, this bag. Example, this bag costs $100. This is what the price that the shop trying to sell you, $100. But $100 will not be the price that you pay, okay? Because the shop will actually charge you another $9. Why $9? Because 9% of 100 is $9, correct? Because 9% means 9 over 100 times $100 is $9. So the shop will charge you extra $9. So the amount that you will pay is $109. And this amount we need to return back to the government. Okay, so that is basically GST means. Okay, so it's again a tax that the government imposed here to try to actually help Singapore to grow. So you need to pay extra 9%. Now the third situation that involves money probably is something called the discount. Teacher, just now you mentioned about GST 9%. Is this fixed? Yeah, as of now, it's fixed. It's 9%. But of course, whether the government will change it in the future, we're not sure. But 9% is what we are having now. Okay? But discount is different. Sometimes the company or the shop, example, can maybe give 10% discount. It can be sometimes 15%, 20%. It depends. Okay? But what's discount? Discount means that you actually can pay lesser. The shop is offering a discount so that you can pay lesser to get the product or get the items that you want. So for example, just talk about 10%. Example, the same bag here. Let's don't talk about GST for now. Just talk about discount first. So for example, this bag is cost $100. The price that the shop is selling is $100. But the shop say, oh, we have a discount today, so it's 10%. Means that you need to actually pay for how much? Again, $100, and it's 10% discount. Means that, again, 100% is the price of the bag. If 10% means what? $10 means that you have the amount of discount. Let me just write here. The amount of discount is $10. So if you minus, you actually need to pay only $90. Again, we don't talk about GST for now. If there's a 10% discount, mean you don't need to pay that $10. They will remove that $10 for you. If it's a 20% discount, means that they will remove what? They will remove $20. So you only need to pay $80. So that is basically the meaning of discount. Sometimes the shop have bigger discount, better discount, like 50%, half price. Also possible. Okay. Now, this is the third situation, and the last situation is what we call it as the annual interest. Now, what is annual interest? So, for example, you have this money. Wow, you have a lot of money. Then you keep it not safe, right? So you put inside what we call it as the bank. Okay. The bank will say, oh, you're putting money here. That's very good. Since you're putting money here, then let me give you some benefits. And that's called the interest. Okay. Annual basically means yearly. Okay. Annual means yearly. Means every year. And example, I say, okay, since you're putting money inside this bank, right? I will offer you the annual interest, for example, 1%. Means that if you put money at 1st January, example 2026, example, okay? You put example 1,000 inside, okay? Now, at the end of 2026, I'll give you extra 1%. Huh, teacher, 1% means how much? Of course, you can say that 1% means 1 over 100 times 1,000. Simplify the 20, simplify the 20, then you will get what? You get extra $10. So it means that extra $10. So it means that at the end of the whole 1 year, you have $1,010. So that is basically means annual interest. If the bank give you 2%, means you earn $20. If it's 3%, you earn $30. So at the end of the year, you get 10, 30, something like this. Okay, so there are basically the 4 situations we have for today. Okay, now let's move on to our page here. So I'm putting a bar model here just to give you a bit of idea, but it doesn't really matter that much lah. Okay, so again, normal is a normal situation. So the first situation is what I call it is normal. Second is GST. Third is discount. And fourth is annual interest. Okay, let me just share with you and show you in detail. Okay, so for example, you have this amount of money. So this is 100%. And you have example $2,000. Wow. Now I say, I want to spend 30% on food. 50% I want to actually buy toys. 20% I want to spend it on maybe just for saving. I will keep it. I will not spend. Now, if I say 100% is 2,000, what is 30%? How much did I spend on food? So what you can do to find out is like this. If 100% is 2,000, then you can find out 1%, or rather simple is 10%. What is the amount? So if 100% is 2,000, 10% it will be 200. So if 10% is 200, then 30% will be what? 30% will be times 3. So 200 times 3 will be 600. So I will say, 600 is what I spend on food. Okay, so that is basically how these things actually works. If I give you that 10%, the amount of money that I have is 2,000. Then I spend on 30% on food, then it's 600. 50% will be what? Means half of this, right? So I think you can somehow find it is 1,000. 20%, again, 10% is 200. 20% is 400. So that is basically how you find everything. Okay, every information. But sometimes I might be a bit bad. How do you be bad? I don't tell you the amount here. I don't tell you the amount here. I don't tell you the amount here. I only tell you, I spent 30% of my money on food, which is 600. What is the amount of money that I have at first? Now, sometimes I might tell you the amount of money I spend on food, but I don't tell you the amount of money I have at first. How do you solve this question? So the same thing, what you need to do is you need to write 30% is 600. Then you find out 10% is equal to what? If 30% is 600, 10% is what? Divide by 3, which is 200. If 10% is 200, what is the original amount of money, which is 100%? It will be 2,000. That's why here you can write is 2,000. Do you get it? Again, it depends on what is the amount of money that I give you. Sometimes I might give you the amount of money that I have, or I give you the amount of food. Okay? That is for normal. Second, GST. Again, as I've shared with you, for example, this bar model is the price, for example, of for an item, for example, a book lah, okay? Then I tell you, this is actually 100% because that is the price before. And I tell you it's actually $40. This is the price of the book. It's actually before GST. Okay? Again, before GST is $40. But if I were to ask you what is the amount of GST that you need to pay extra, again, GST is always what? Is always GST, always 9% for now. Means that you need to pay extra 9%. But what is the amount of GST? Amount means I want to pay for how much? How many dollar? Then you need to do the same thing. 100% is $40. Then what is 1%? Now again, just now I used 10% as my basic calculation, right? Now I use 1% because this is 9 so it's easier to use 1. And if it's 1%, means I move how many 0? 2 0. Means that here I also need to move 1, 2, 2 0. So means that 1% is actually 0.40, so 40 cents. If 1% is 40 cents, 9% is actually 40 cents times 9, which is $3.60. If they were to ask you what is the amount of GST that you pay, so it's $3.60. Now, another thing they will ask you is, again, since now you know the price of the book is $40, the GST is $3.60, what is the amount that you pay? What's the amount that you will pay? Then there will be what? $40 plus $3.60, which is $43.60. Okay, so this is the amount after GST, the amount that you need to pay. Okay, so let's move on and talk about discount. Again, as you know, discount means that you need to pay lesser. You can pay lesser. So for example, I can say that, this is 100%, oops, up to here. I would say that, the item, for example, is $250. This is a sports shoes. Let me just write. This is a sports shoes. So sports shoe, they are making a discount, and this discount is a 20% discount. Wow, so nice. So you know the sports shoes before discount is 100%, and you know it's $250. Okay. But there is a problem here. This is not the final amount that I need to pay. There is a discount, right? Then the question usually will ask you, what is the amount of discount? Means that how much they try to cut off for you. Then again, 100% is what? 100% is 250. Then what is 10%? 10% means you are dividing by 10 here, divided by 10 here. So it's $25. If 10% is 25, 20% is actually equal to $50. So it means that the amount of discount that they cut for you is $50. But what is the amount that you pay? Amount you pay. Okay, again, we don't talk about GST for now. So if it's $50, what's the amount that you need to pay? Again, the original price is $250. Again, this is after discount. $250. We minus away $50, which is the amount of discount. Means that the amount that you need to pay is $200. Okay, so that is basically how this works. Now, and I strongly believe some of you might be asking me, teacher, if in real life, right, we have discount and we of course need to pay GST, right? Yeah. And then how this works. In that case, that if, of course we need to pay GST. In the case, if you see a question telling you discount and also GST, usually is the discount come first, then GST. Okay? What do you mean? Means that, example, this is 100% is 250, discount is 20%, now 200, right? Then from here, you need to find out what is the 7%, then you add them together. Okay? So for example, this case, again, by the way, GST is based on the discounted price. Means that this is the after GST price, right? This is what we also call it as the discounted price. And it's 9% of the discounted price. So it means that I'm taking 200 now as my 100%. Then find out 1% is $2. 9% is $18. That's why the amount that I really pay is 200 plus 18, which is 218. Okay, I hope you get the whole key idea on how this works. Again, if you really to pay GST on an item that's discount, you always base that GST 9% based on the discounted price. Means that you are, after you have discounted, you will take this 200 as your 100%. Okay. Again, might be a bit confusing, but of course I will discuss in class as well. So this is something that you should take note for now. Okay, let me just cut this off. Okay, annual interest, something that is a bit easier to understand. Before that, let me just introduce you a word called deposit, or the word deposited. So deposited basically means I put money in bank. Put money in bank. Because some of you might see this word deposited, then you might be questioning, what's the meaning of this word? Basically means I put money inside the bank. That's called deposited. So for example, now, this example, you are rich now. You have like $3,000. Wow. So you have 100%, that's the amount of money that you have, $3,000. And now you are trying to deposit this money inside the bank at the beginning of the year. Now again, I may use the word beginning of the year. And the bank promise you, I will give you annual interest. And I will give you maybe 2%. Wow. Means that you put 3,000 inside, at the end of the year, you earn extra 2%. Now, probably the first question they will ask you is, what is the amount of interest? Amount of interest is how much that you actually earn. Then you do the same thing. 100% is 3,000, right? Then what is 1%? 1% means 20, you need to cut it off. So it's actually $30. And if 1% is 30, 2% is actually $60. Means that the amount of interest that you earn is actually $60. At the beginning, you put 3,000. At the end of the year, you earn extra $60. But another question that they will be probably asking you is, what is the amount of money you have in the bank at the end of the year? If that is the question they ask you, again, you have how much? You have 3,000, right? And because of the interest, they give you how much? $60, right? So at the end of the year, how much you have in the bank? You have 3,060 $3,060. Okay, yeah, so that is basically the kind of question that you'll be seeing for now. Okay, so let's try to look at some of the example that you will see. I've split into practices for normal, GST, interest, all this, so you can see. For example, $125, spend 40%, it should cost how much? Yeah, so you can take a look here. About GST, $80, how much is the GST? What is the price, including the 9% GST? Yeah, $12 before GST, pay 9% GST, or maybe see some discount. The usual price is 36, but discount is 25%. Wow. Okay. So yeah, and in no interest. So these are the questions that you'll be seeing at this stage. Now, I hope that through this video, you have learned more about this percentage involved money, and you have known this 4 situation well: the normal situation, the GST, the discount, and the annual interest. Okay, and I hope you learned something, and let's try it out some of the questions here. And thank you. See you. Bye bye.